taking a little break, doing some demolition over here at the job site. I want to take this opportunity to talk to you about fascism, and I'm going to use the subject of fascism to get on the subject of Rastafarianism. So I'm kicking you a little bit of knowledge with a little bit of coolness at the same time so that we can level it out. Fascism. Fascist? What is that? It's a particular kind of a government. And the funny thing, in my opinion, I guess the correct way to say it is the ironic thing, in my opinion, is that according to the description of a fascist government, the economic structure is a capitalist one, like the one we have here in the United States. And considering that most of our lifestyle is based on our capitalist economy, it's easy to see how you can make the transition from a republic to a dictatorship without really having to unroot anybody from where they're at. You know, it's like whenever Hitler took over Germany, he didn't have to do this economical thing because he just took the powers at the top and switched it around, but the economic structure stayed the same, you know. And ironically, the Vietnamese government today, which we were taught as a communist government, which a communist economy is way different than a capitalist economy, but ironically, even though the Vietnamese, the North, or I should say the Southern Vietnamese regime fell to the communists, in a way, the Southern Vietnamese have gone there and made a comeback via the capitalist economy, because the capitalist economy allows you to operate on these levels and not necessarily fuck with the integrity of the dictator or the oligarchy or the democracy or the republic. So it's easy to see how this kind of a economy can make it easy to flip the script on people, especially a large group of people, before they even know it, before they even realize it. You know, and like I've mentioned before, a lot of people have developed this sort of Stockholm syndrome where they've, you become sympathetic with civilization because you know that's how you have to survive. You don't know how to take care of yourself in the woods anymore, so you gotta go to the store to get food. You gotta use the bathroom. You gotta do all these things that you've been led to believe they're required for you to exist, but really it's just the parameters of society. Whether you want to, you just take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. You know, but the word fascism comes from the word fasces, which is a Latin word, and it refers to the symbol, one of the symbols during World War II. You know, in Italy, the fascist regime was called the Black Shirts, and and they had a symbol called the fasces, which is where we get the word fascist from, or fascism. So the Italians, when they joined in on the World War II circumstance, they were trying to redeem themselves in the name of the Roman Empire, because Italy, obviously, where Rome is, used to be the seat of the capital of the world, and why wouldn't they want it to be that way again? So what happened is they started helping the whole Hitler movement by go ahead and starting to move on Africa. And the thing that was sad about it is that the Ethiopian government was very, the Ethiopian people are still very poor, but even at that time, they were armed with spears. While if you can picture this, a bunch of guys armed with spears, it might sound familiar to you. It might sound a little bit like what went down in the United States when the Indians were here. But anyways, not that there's not still Indians here, but definitely the numbers have been cut. We've been marginalized. So the Italians, trying to compete with Hitler as if they could, are invading. I want you to picture this. They're invading Ethiopia on bicycles, holding their machine guns or whatever they've been issued, you know what I'm saying? And so they're fighting natives with spears. And these guys, and even though they look ridiculous on their bikes, I'm sure they're gunning down these Ethiopians like it ain't nothing. Where Rastafarian comes into play is that at the time of World War II, there was a guy named Haile Selassie, or Prince Tafari, or you might have known him, you might have heard this term Rastafari, which is an Ethiopian term. Ras means prince, and Tafari is the name that they give to Haile Selassie on a holy level. So Prince Haile Selassie is Rastafari himself. Rastafarianism as a religion believes that Haile Selassie was Christ, and let me explain to you why. When the Italians were invading Ethiopia on their bicycles with their machine guns, Prince Haile Selassie knew that there was no way he could compete with this. And ultimately, this was part of the pressure that led to Britain getting involved with the Hitler dispute, with the whole Nazi movement, and which eventually drew the United States into the war too. But what Prince Haile Selassie is, a prince, you know, I want you to remember this, is he's alleged to be descended of the house of David, like he's the great descendant of King David. So that's another thing that makes Rastafarianism believe in him as the Christ, is the fact that he has a genealogy record that leads them to believe that he's a descendant of David, and that he is the, you know, if you see the pictures of the Ethiopian flag before the communist takeover, you see it has a lion on it, and that lion is the Lion of Judah, and that represents Rastafari, or the lineage of King David. And so when you see the flags of Ethiopia now, they do not have the lion on them, and that is because Prince Tafari has been killed and he's been taken off the flag in the name of communism. Incidentally, Prince Tafari was beaten to death in prison by the Communist Party in Ethiopia, and that was how he died. And it's said that he had no sin, you know, in a lot of different ways. You know, Rita Marley says that she saw scars pertaining to stigmata on his hands. But what I think was the most Christ-like action is the fact that he went to Britain, to Parliament, in front of the royal class and all that shit, and he got down on his hands and knees and he begged the British to please come save my people. Not that they got saved, but he did that. And he was still beat to death in prison so that he wouldn't cause a political problem in Ethiopia. And that's a little scratch of the surface on fascism, Rastafarianism, Prince Haile Selassie, and all that stuff. And I know it's weird for me to tie it all together like this, but just imagine the spectrum of things that I've taught you just now by getting you to listen for 8 minutes.